Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're watching or where you're watching. My name is Adam Muqattash. All my buddies call me Squash, like the vegetable. I won't go too far into that. Y'all know me, though, as your classmate or maybe even your team member in English 123, English composition with Professor Hubble. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm sorry. Probably dock points for that, I understand. Um, Going to be showing you guys a rough draft of my PSA style video on why I believe the Air Force should stop lowering its fitness standards. To kind of start us off, the main reason I hold this belief is because of the overwhelming amount of evidence that I've been able to find, peer reviewed or not, showing the benefits both mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, either way, all of those benefits adding up to things you can get from working out and just regular physical fitness, not even on an intensive level, but just a regulatory, almost like keeping up on it. To start from the beginning, though, I will establish when the Air Force separated from the Army Air Corps and became its own separate branch back in 1947. The physical fitness standards of the Army carried over to the Air Force to keep things simple. Traditionally, they've always stuck to three main components when it comes to their physical fitness standards. They had some form of aerobic test, whether it be running or something else. They had some form of physical fitness, that breaking down into two sections, push ups and sit ups, to name some examples. Um, Followed up with a body composition test. At least that's what they labeled it. It's really just a waist measurement um, that you'll see more traditionally today. From the sources I've been able to find, the most current version of the United States Air Force physical fitness test consists of those three components, of course, and that is your 1.5 mile run, your maximum amount of push ups in a 1 minute time period, and your maximum amount of sit ups in a 1 minute time period. Uh, for the push ups and the sit ups, they both work the same. You're given a 1 minute time limit to complete as many repetitions as possible, as long as the repetitions fall within some categories that make them a good or a bad repetition, such as, you know, not going down enough for a sit up or a push up. I won't dive too much into that. That's its own separate topic. As time has gone on, traditionally the Air Force has lowered physical fitness standards to try and use it as an incentive to keep some of the old heads around. When I say old heads, it's not a derogatory term, it's just a blanket term for traditionally anyone over 40 or so years old. They typically call that an old head in the Air Force. Some of your higher, more experienced people in higher ranks and positions. Um, these people at their point in their life. As we all know, as you get older, your standard for physical fitness or what you're capable of doing yourself will slowly drop off and lower. With that being said, the Air Force tries to keep with that to keep said old heads by lowering those physical fitness standards as the age progresses. I specifically mention that to state that that is not an issue in my mind. I understand cutting some slack for the older guys to keep the experience around and pass on information to younger generations. The problem that I was having was the lowering of physical fitness standards for the lowest age bracket, the 25 years or younger age bracket. I believe that there is not really any good reason to lower the physical fitness standards in that age bracket. The reason I hold that belief is because of two big topics. One, I believe it's making the Air Force a much less deployable, war ready asset, and the second of which being financial loss. One of the ways obesity has been shown to negatively affect the body in multiple ways is from Haishan Shen's study back in 2020, showing that obesity was very greatly linked with an increase in ventricular repolarization, which can have a negative effect on the blood flow from the heart, which of course leads to cardiovascular diseases that can, of course, cause injury as well as surgery or sometimes even death, which of course all cost money from the military. Furthermore, Heinrich et al. Found in 2016 that higher physical fitness standards were actually a breeding ground for higher morale and better mental stability amongst military members, creating a creating a more tight knit community within the military group, which improved productivity by, I believe, roughly 33%, according to the research. Additionally, Dr. Cadena found in 2012 that the difference in obese and non obese individuals' fat free mass energy expenditure led to the obese individuals having a higher level of cardiovascular risk because of the increase in blood pressure from their cardiovascular organs and ventricles. This, of course, put a lower life expectancy on a lot of their cardio parts inside of their body, such as the heart, thus leading to more surgeries and a lower life expectancy in total. Now, as I stated at the start of this PSA, this is simply my take on it. We're now going to go outside and get some other people's thoughts on it. Here, I got my buddy
Nico?
Nico. I miss my buddy Nico. So what you're seeing here now was the original plan was to interview people in uniform, kind of get some representation, but PA has deemed that not legal. So I am now here in plain clothes, not representing the Air Force, and we are just two random strangers that definitely aren't in the Air Force talking about the Air Force. So the biggest thing we're talking about here is my personal stand on the Air Force's fitness exam and its fitness standards, so to speak. Me personally, my statement is that the Air Force should stop lowering its fitness standards as it's been routinely doing over the last decade, because, in my opinion, it's creating a much more somber, less deployable asset. Furthermore, I think it's also hemorrhaging the United States government millions, maybe even billions every year, having to keep up with less fit people in the Air Force because, statistically speaking, less fit people have more health problems, which leads to more surgeries, procedures, checkups, so on and so forth, costing more money. Now, with that being said, that's my stand and statement on the topic. We're going to pass over now to Nico to get his point of view on it and his general sum up.
In my opinion, I can see why the Air Force is lowering its fitness standards, and that is because there's a lot of people in the force that would be having to get kicked out if they didn't lower their standards, and that is helping them maintain a lot of experience that has been accrued through the years. And it also helps with recruitment as well if they can take less physically fit uh, young people. So I understand why it's happening, but also think that it is hurting the quality of our force because we don't have as capable members.
Very well spoken by our buddy Nico here. Nico, I appreciate your time.
Yes.
Thank you for coming out. On to the next contestant. Hey guys, second person we got here is going to be.
Chance Cresswell, what's going on? Oh, my bad.
And what's your take on the topic presented?
So personally, I don't think the PT standard should be lowered in the Air Force. No matter what branch it is the military. And the nature of what we do is a physical requirement, right? And I feel as if lowering the standards is lowering the capabilities that the Air Force has in general. Um, so there are some jobs where they're sitting there at a desk pushing paper, which is required, but I don't think that should be an excuse to not be fit, right? And I feel like that is such a small fraction of what the Air Force does. Um, to I oh wow, I'm gonna stutter in my words here. Okay, so I don't think PT standards should be lowered for the military, let alone the Air Force. The military is a physical job. It requires you. It's a physically demanding job, and lowering the PT standards is lowering the capabilities that the military has in general. Air Force or not, it doesn't matter. There's always going to be a physical requirement, and lowering it for retention reasons or getting more people in is a sad idea, because you were ultimately just lowering what we could do in the Air Force. And some will argue that do you need to be in that much shape to push papers across the desk? And while you don't have to be in physical shape for that, you are part of a bigger team. So there are other members that require that physical capability that you might not need for your job, but you still are part of the team. So don't drag down the rest of the team. So I don't think lowering the standards for those select few is doing any benefit for the Air Force. It's actually stabbing itself in the foot. Uh, so that's what to say about that.
Thank you, Chance. And finally, we have AJ Brown. There you go. Hold that.
Sweet, thanks.
So, audience knows my take on it. How do you feel about it?
All right, this is what I think about the military lowering their standards and why they shouldn't do that. So, I actually think what we have right now isn't too bad. It shouldn't be lowered any further because a lot of people in the military, their job is to help the people who actually do the work. So, air crew or special warfare, um, like finance, for example, they don't really need to have all that extra. So, certain jobs, they don't need extra or less fitness per se. The current standards are fine. They don't need to be made any easier. There's no reason to. It is the military after all. But I think personally, in certain spots of the military, like aircrew or special warfare, which I think already special warfare already has implemented, but security forces as well, they should have additional standards because in their roles they requires more of them physically. So from what I heard from my brother, who's a tactical systems operator on a U-28, small little airplane, uh, while he was deployed overseas, they had a guy. He was 300 pounds, right? Just lard. And this man should not be flying on small planes. They cannot take off the runway because it messes with the weight imbalances of these small aircrafts to take off these desolate small fields in these deserts. So they literally had to move this man from this airfield to a bigger airfield so he can actually fly on another airframe because he was so large.
You got to take a making it up. I'm being serious.
And with that being said, surprisingly, there isn't much that I have to rebuke from the people that we interviewed because they either rebuted themselves during their speech or rebuted by one of the other speakers. So that makes my job a little bit easier, not having to do more editing and recording. So, with that, I'd like to just make some closing remarks and kind of just sum up everything I've said as well as other people have said, and provide the reference list at the back of it. So, with everything we've collected here over the past few days, I do still hold my belief that the Air Force should stop holding its or stop reducing its fitness standards. Excuse me. Although I have come to term and kind of switched my viewpoint on it a little bit. I think I really agreed with some of the stuff that some of our guest speakers said. I think the fitness standards where they are right now are a good compromise in between on having a baseline for the paper pushers and the people that aren't required to do as much while still having for very specific jobs a higher standing like for special ops and stuff like that. I do think we can still refine the fitness standards here and there, but on a grand scheme I do think that they are at a decent point considering some of the things that our other guest speakers said. Additionally, I did want to point out, I know that this background was kind of distracting, probably for a good portion of the video, and kind of to transition from the lighter tone of the video to something a bit more serious. Um, this was a picture that a buddy of mine, Riley Johnson, took about a year ago. At night, I was laughing to the point of wheezing. You can see the strain in my face. And he got a picture of me in a fisheye lens. Um, the reason I chose this background was unfortunately that the buddy that took this photo, Riley Johnson, just passed away last weekend. got into a car accident with a semi and ended up underneath said semi. And we just had the funeral procession where I saw him for the last time in the form of a jar full of ashes this past Friday. And I kind of wanted to just use that as a statement to remind everybody that although we may have differing opinions, you might not like something other people do, stuff like that. I do implore everyone to try and just, keep kind of an upper echelon mindset of, not making any enemies and just befriending everyone you can, because you never know when the last thing you say to somebody might be the last thing that they hear. And it's a good reminder that we aren't here forever, and we do have to cherish what we have, even if it may not be that much. But I don't want to go too far off topic. With that, I will pass it back to you guys and say I really appreciate anyone that watched this video, including you, Professor Hibble. Again, doc points if I pronounce that wrong. Yeah, I will throw up the reference list here at the end of the video. Forgive me for the quality of the reference list. I tried a lot of different methods to improve the quality of it. Having trouble with that. I can send a separate reference sheet with the video submission if you need. But I appreciate you guys for watching. Seriously, uh, this was a really good opportunity for me to try and push out of my shell. Yeah, it really helped. But I love you guys. Be safe.